Good morning, Winterview, back again with another brief dialogue for his dear friend, Annastacey. That's right. Well, on my way to work once again, driving in the 1.3, burning up the hill. Apologies again for the sounds of revving engine, and this morning, sounds of pelting rain. Not to worry. Push on. I'll push on for your benefit, so you can download some knowledge, spiritual knowledge, and feel enlightenment grow deep within your spiritual gland. This morning's dialogue is on the quality, the nature of awareness / experience. Kind of a bit more of a mystical, esoteric dialogue. Kind of a hard one to talk about. Perhaps a little bit meditative. Oh, pulled that word off nicely there. And yeah, let's see how we go with it. So, in this appearance, this life that we see before us, that we hear, we feel, that we taste and smell, and all the wonderful sensory mechanisms that seem to give us signals that we live in a world, on a planet, in a neighborhood, in a city, in a town, in a house, etc. All these wonderful clues we take for granted. We just presume that they are as they appear. They are exactly as we see them, as we perceive them. And therefore, in what we might call spirituality, we are that unusual group of people, perhaps, who, for some reason, who knows why, perhaps something is in the water where we live, we do not accept necessarily that world which appears before us. We are curious about it. We wonder, is the world as we see it, or is there something else going on? Is there a world beneath the world, perhaps, that we see? Are we seeing accurately? Are we to trust our perceptions? These kinds of thoughts to the spiritual seeker are par for the course. They are the bread and butter of our very existence. Whereas your neighbour who doesn't care, further doesn't care to explore because they take what they see as actual and factual. That's it. That's all there is. So are we poor spiritual seekers deluded? Are we looking too deeply? Is our neighbour right? Is the world just as it seems? Is it as it is, so to speak? Let's have a look. Let's pull back the curtain. Try and use a very simple example for this exploration / investigation. I'm presently driving, as you are no doubt aware, so I'll use my steering wheel as my obvious example. I'm going to not think about my steering wheel in the conventional way of thinking about it. What I'm going to do is describe the experience as it is appearing. The first thing I can say, or could say, is that the appearance of steering wheel is not permanent. Now, that might seem obvious to anyone who's thought mildly about how the world works, but it's a kind of important in some ways, thing to remember, that this steering wheel has appeared at some point in consciousness, and at some point it will go away. And even during the experience of steering wheel, it's not a stable, solid experience. It's ever shifting in a way, the actual experience. For example, I'm more or less looking at the road most of the time, unless I see a pretty young lady on the side of the road. My eye might wander for a moment, and then back to the road. Occasionally, being the flagrantly outlaw, total disregard for safety, reckless kind of guy that I am, I sometimes travel 5% over the speed limit if I want to have a thrill, and therefore I might look down at the dashboard to check my speed. And on that looking down, there's a steering wheel there. Steering wheel where it is expected to be. I feel my hands on this, I don't even know how to describe it, like a rubbery plastic feeling. There are nodules or ridges in the top of the wheel, presumably for grip, as per the manufacturer's specifications. There's, if I flick my eyes down, a colour, a dark bluish grey colour. And if I look carefully, although it's hard to when driving, there are dimples throughout the plastic. The manufacturer's logo appears briefly as I flick my eyes down. There's a symbol of a airbag thing, reassuring me that when I plough headlong into a huge oncoming truck, that I'll definitely be fine with my airbag. And so these component parts, you could say, are confirming the notion, the thought, the idea, the concept, whatever you want to call it, that there is indeed a steering wheel, confirming it. But is that the case? Could it be possible, just throwing this out there, could it be possible that we could disregard the concept, the idea steering wheel, and just be left with the raw impressionistic experience of steering wheel? Would that make a difference? Or could we go the other way? Could we throw out the impressions? And this is something that happens for most bodies, is that if there's a distraction or a thinking about something else intensely, one part of the appearance in consciousness seems to just go away. You can be totally unaware there's a steering wheel. You're on autopilot, as you might say, as you drive to work, thinking about work or thinking about the traffic or something else in your life that's pressing. No experience at all of steering wheel, and strangely, even though it's right in front of you. But we're putting it under the microscope this morning, the steering wheel, the old steering wheel. Bless it. Where would I be without it? Probably in that tree over there. So we're still talking about the raw experience with concepts. Even to describe the sensory process of steering wheel requires concepts. I need to be able to describe the firmness of the plastic, the colour, the shape, circular no doubt, location in the car. All these things, all these sensory processes again require descriptions to just talk about them. If I took all those concepts away, what would I be left with? Something. Hard to talk about, isn't it, without the concepts? Some direct, tactile / visual, perhaps olfactory, perhaps I haven't smelled my steering wheel, and taste, no doubt, if I was to lick it. Some sort of sensory profile would seemingly still be appearing, but remembering not appearing in a solid way, in a fleeting way. It's there, it's not, it's there, it's not. And now we come down to this raw something, this sort of something is happening. We can't say exactly what without our concepts. We're not sure if we need the concepts for this to appear. It seems that it can appear independently of the concepts, which suggests that the concepts and the experience are not linked in the way we might think. The word steering wheel, in other words, is not the steering wheel. That's a story, a narrative that runs alongside the experience of steering wheel. And for most people though, especially where I work in the clinical setting, there is a grave confusion in mental health for a lot of clients that the thought is the reality. The thought is the thing itself. The thought is the steering wheel. But for us in the putting it under the microscope in-depth inquiry this morning, where can we go from here with the baseline experience? We've got rid of all the concepts. Now we're down to this level of this primordial level of something. Something seems to be happening. The next step down is the question of the awareness itself. This awareness itself. It seems, in just general terms, that I'm sitting in the driver's seat, or I'm here about 2 feet, 1.5 feet, 40, 50, 60 centimeters away from this experience, still keeping my concepts on hold, at bay. I seem to be here and the wheel seems to be in front of me, but that again is a concept. That's an idea about space. I can erase that idea. If I was to close my eyes, which I am not going to do, which I'm not going to do, the sense of space becomes very mysterious very quickly. The idea of here and there is suddenly way more difficult to determine. All there would be, if I was to close my eyes, would be a sort of tactile something, you might say, a somatic something somewhere in time and space. But we're down now at one of the very sort of more fundamental levels of experience, and that is the level of what we might call awareness itself. Awareness itself. Now here's the interesting question. We'll just stick to one sensory process, the feeling of touch. Got my hand on the wheel, taken away the concept, so it's just something, more or less. And if you remember the concept, the hand is touching the wheel, yeah? So there's a touching, you could say. The experience is the touching, or the experience, on the other way around, is the firmness of the plastic. That's the experience. Just sticking with the tactile, sorry. Oh wait, did I say visual before? My apologies. We're going with the tactile. There's the experience of just the firmness with a slight sponginess, with the ridges-ness in experience. Now this is where it gets very tricky for the mind, to partial it out, to separate. is the experience of the plastic, the firmness, and the touching or the physical contact, are they separate? Are they two things? This is where it gets real subtle. And you might need, if you are listening to this, to have something in your hand to follow along. There's from this is just from my experience alone, just looking at the experience without trying to layer concepts of I'm touching, or my hand is touching, or the plastic feels like this. Nothing like that. Just a sense of the actual touching itself. I cannot separate the touching from the plasticky experience. They seem, it's the same experience. I cannot separate them. The touching or the plasticking doesn't really matter which way you roll with that. I cannot separate that. And how is it known? How is the experience experienced? Something to do, I mean, we want to jump into the old spiritual words straight away, consciousness, awareness, etc., all that stuff. We'll just keep it in the ordinary language domain. Without saying I'm aware, because we've chopped out the I with the concepts, got rid of it, put it in the bin, the recycle bin. There's the awareness of touching. But could there be the touching without the awareness of it? That seems so preposterously impossible as to the most rudimentary intelligence would be if the answer would be no. Of course there isn't. Of course you cannot have the touching without the awareness of it. How would it be known? There must be the awareness of the touching. But if we're chopping away concepts, the awareness of suggests a duality. And what it suggests is that I, the person, am aware of. Therefore there is an awareness of. But keeping the concepts to a minimum, if possible. And it's very difficult to keep talking without them. Is the awareness and the experience itself, are they separate? Can I separate the awareness from the plasticky firmness, or the touching, if you prefer that? Can I separate those two? The answer is no, I can't. I can do it conceptually. I can declare it, just I'm aware, or something is aware. But when it comes to the actual factual, non-conceptualized, raw experience, we'll call it, the awareness is the experience, or the awareness / plasticky feeling are one and the same. They have to be, even with rudimentary logic. That is not even verifying it with your experience. You cannot separate the awareness of the experience from the experience. They are one and the same. Now this is hopefully where your mind will be blown. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. That therefore suggests that the substance or substrate of the experience, or the substrate of the plastic, if you like, is awareness itself. Awareness awareness itself. Or if you want to be a little bit poetic, awareness in the form of, awareness taking shape as that plasticky whatever, or the touching, awareness as. Now, in the more, using the more sort of spiritualized terminology, consciousness, I'm not a big fan of the word consciousness because of its medical connotations and ideas about awake and asleep and all that, which get a bit confusing. Consciousness itself is, from other dialogues, awake, aware, something. So if we replace the word awareness with consciousness, then consciousness itself is the experience of the plasticky steering wheel. They're one and the same. And again, being poetic, consciousness in the form of the wheel, the plasticky hard steering wheel. Now, for those of you who process quickly and extrapolate fast, you might be sitting there in a silent awe. Because if you've extrapolated this one simple notion outwards to the rest of the world, it's saying something quite remarkable. It's saying that the world is consciousness. The world is consciousness. There is no separation. Even the thoughts that appear, now we can start bringing back in the concepts. If the thought is an object of sorts, just like the steering wheel, then the awareness of the thought cannot be really separated. And therefore the thought itself is awareness or consciousness. And suddenly it all becomes very peculiar, because this person who I thought was sitting here looking or doing all this is also similarly an experience as well, in the same way the steering wheel is. The person that I took myself to be is an experience. And if the person itself is an experience, then that too is that aware consciousness in the form of, you might say. A little bit cautious on that last tag, in the form of, because that's only an appearance, an impression. Form is an impression. So my thoughts, my experiences, everything I see, I perceive, the world, all my ideas, which in essence, the only thing I am looking at in one sense are my ideas, because you notice that when we get rid of the concepts, we can't say anything, we can't even think about it. So the whole world, you could say, that is just being dreamt up constantly in my mind, this and that and what's over there and I'm this and no, all that stuff appears as an experience in consciousness, in awareness, even if you prefer that word. All that stuff again comes back to the same single awareness / consciousness. It's made of the same stuff, and we know that now from this brief exploration, because we cannot separate it, we cannot partial it out, except conceptually. Conceptually, that's how it appears. So the world appears in parts, but it also appears singular as well. Anyway, drifting off into a bit of the old samadhi there. Better stop. Once again, thanks for listening. Hope this was interesting in some way. As usual, your comments are very welcome.